Hello, my name is Artie Miles, and this is Chapter 10, Ethic and War on Terrorism. After 9/11, the U.S. didn't treat terrorism like a crime. They called it a war. This chapter explores the ethical questions that come up when fighting terrorism like a war instead of using the justice system. What is terrorism? Terrorism is hard to define. The U.S. law, violence by secret groups to scare civilians. The UN interpreted it as an act meant to cause fear or force a government to act. Wilkinson, political violence used to intimidate and control. Some definitions ignore state-sponsored terrorism. Terrorism as a moral label. Calling someone a terrorist is a moral judgment. It makes the group seem evil or unjust. It affects public opinion and policy. One group's freedom fighter may be another's terrorist. War versus crime. Why did the U.S. choose war instead of law enforcement? Well, war gives the president more power. If a president enacts in war during his term, then he more likely will actually be able to continue the next term so he can finish his war that he started. Usually that's how it goes. Allows militaries to strike and secret operations. Fewer rules and less protection for rights. Experts say crime control is better because it uses courts and trials, protects human rights, avoids endless wars. Justice versus security models. Justice model, due process, civil rights, fair trials. Security model, punishment, surveillance, control. Patriot Act increased government power. Critics say security efforts bypass justice. Military tribunal. U.S. used military courts for suspected terrorists based on war rules, not criminal law. Critics say that this violates civil liberties. Others say it helps global corporations. Risk of a warlike approach. War can expand conflict beyond the target's group. Civilian death, reduce support. Unilateral actions weaken alliances. Unilateral actions weaken alliances. Endless wars become the norm. War powers depend on executive decisions. Torture and human rights. After 9/11, some leaders said torture was needed. U.S. law says torture is illegal. Lawyers changed the meaning to allow harsh treatment. Guantanamo Bay held people without trial. Some say torture is never okay. Others say it might be needed in extreme cases. I don't think torture is ever needed. There's other ways like due process. You can just go ahead and take a person to court, and if they're guilty, just go ahead and let them do their time, or you can give them the death penalty. California, we still believe in the death penalty. I believe in the death penalty. If you did something really heinous, you deserve to die. Lawful torture example. Israel used necessity to excuse torture. No prosecution despite court ruling. Raises questions about accountability and ethics. Morally justifiable restrictions. Can governments restrict rights to fight terrorism? Restrictions must be based on strong moral reasonings. Must reduce threats and not violate human rights. Liberty and security don't have to conflict. Measures must be minimal and justified. Targeted killings in drones. U.S. uses drones to kill suspected terrorists. I think that's the safest way to go. Boots on the ground, less casualties, more of the enemies die. I'm sorry, but if I call you enemy, you need to die. But I more or less lean towards, the legal system, and, I'm a strong believer in God, so I'm human, but I always fall back on my faith, and I try to, rethink the things that I do. U.S. uses drones to kill suspected terrorists, often without trials. Civilians sometimes get hurt. CIA runs many missions in secret. Critics say it's an assassination. Supporters say it's self-defense. The CIA, they've been, especially in my neighborhood where I grew up in Los Angeles, and I know Rick Ross personally. He's a real good buddy of mine. He's one of my older friends, good buddy, and that's how I got to meet him. And he just talked about how basically, they offered him all these drugs and all this money just to, come flood the hood with drugs. And he said all the people that he were dealing with were CIA agents, And that was a big thing in the hood because the homies at first thought that he could have been a snitch. So the morality of targeted killings. Who counts as a combatant? U.S. history, CIA ops, drone strikes, even U.S. citizens, justified as self-defense, but critics say it's an assassination. Complex ethics, war versus law enforcement. Disembodied warfare. Drone operations fight from far away. No physical risk to themselves. Some say it feels like a video game. Others say operations still feel stress and empathy. Raises questions. Is it fair to kill without risk? Yes, I think so. The less casualties, the less casualties, the better off Americans are. The quicker they can go back to normalcy. Taking lives is very hard. And it requires a lot of counseling. If you can keep soldiers off the battleground and away from combat as much as you can, because combat is combat, you'll have a more healthier soldier, in my opinion. Legal and moral concerns. CIA drone strikes lack transparency. No public rules or oversight. Raises questions about accountability. Ethics must guide all actions. You gotta be right when you do these things. You can't just do them for, just to be evil. Ethical limits. Michael Ignatieff's 4 questions before using tough measures. Do they hurt human dignity? Are they truly needed? Will they make us safer long term? Do they follow international law? If the answer is no, we shouldn't use them, even in war. Ethical alternatives. Wilkinson's attack root causes, avoid military force. Ackerman, treat terrorism as emergency, not war. Blum and Heyman, create new laws and courts for terrorism. Focus on law enforcement, human rights, and cooperation. Final thoughts. The war on terrorism changed how we think about justice, war, and human rights. It blurred the line between fighting enemies and protecting citizens. It raised hard questions about torture, killing, and freedom. It showed how fear can reshape law and policy. We must ask, are we protecting democracy or hurting it? No single definition, this is the summary. No single definition of terrorism. U.S. treated terrorism as national security, not crime. Rights were restricted, surveillance, detention, profiling, torture, and secret trials used against unlawful combatants. Ethics must protect justice, dignity, and public trust. Well, that'll be my presentation for this evening. Once again, my name is Artie Miles, and you have a good night.